this morning I'm sitting with Leighton Roberts, one of the co-founders and 3EO of Sharesies.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I hadn't heard that before. So, as we were just talking offline, you are incredibly busy at the moment. So thank you for making the time to sit with me this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. So, Sharesies, what if you were going to sit down for the first time, someone who didn't know what it was, what's the elevator pitch?
Yeah, it's a portfolio in your pocket. It's a wealth development platform, a place where you can go to develop your wealth, get education towards that, to buy or sell over or pretty close to 10,000 different types of investments, or save your money, or in New Zealand for KiwiSaver as well. So, and for the invest side of the business, that's available in Australia. So for Australians and New Zealanders.
That's epic. You touched on
It's been a while
education.
since I've done the elevator pitch. Actually, it's a good question to start with, but we used to be very well rehearsed at that a few years ago.
Yeah, well, I suppose, it's quite synonymous at the moment, isn't it? Sharesies. We've seen the pink and the pineapple for 6 years now, is it?
Yeah, 29th of May was our 6th birthday.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so many people already do know the Sharesies brand pretty well. Kids share share portfolios, your own share portfolio, and whatnot. So, how did you guys dream up Sharesies?
Yeah, so there's actually 6 founders. So along with the 3EO, like you touched on, the co-CEO, there's a few different things about Sharesies. One of them as well is that we had 6 founders. So Brooke, Sonia, and I, who share that the director title and co-CEO part of the business, originally went full time, and the idea came like from just a good old problem statement, really, which is Sonia wanted to invest, but she didn't want to. She wanted to do it with $50 and not just waste that somewhere on a meal, and she wanted to do it in a place that engaged her and in line, so that it could be a bit fun as well. Online, sorry, so it could be a bit fun as well. So, her and I were originally introduced because she was talking to another friend of ours, John, who now leads our Invest product here, and he said, "Oh, look, for $50 a week, I know that Leighton's got this investment club that he does. You should go chat with him." And her and I worked at KiwiBank, so we started talking about the investment club. We had more and more coffees talking about what this could look like. This was sort of late 2016, and we started to introduce new people to it. So Brooke, who's my wife now, was partner at the time. Her and I were really interested in starting a business. We knew that we were going to do something. We just didn't know what. Ben's partner, Sonia's partner, Ben, they were in a similar position. Ben's a fabulous designer, so we're talking with him about it. And then a couple of friends, or a friend of mine, Martin, who I played in a brass band with, ran an engineering company, and we talked about doing some business together, and his business partner, Richard. So before we knew it, really, we were in a room talking about it. And next thing you know, we quit our jobs, or at least Brooke, Sonia, and I did, as a starting point, after talking to heaps of people over about 6 months. And it just got to the point where it felt like the problem was real there. Like heaps of people wanted to be investors. No one felt like they could, but it was really aspirational thing for people. And that's how we got going. So we just started building a product from there. And I guess in some ways not in some ways, we've been lucky enough to ride a wave of markets, particularly through the COVID period leading up to that, and then following that with a very bullish market, which supported a lot of growth in the business really quickly. So it's been a great 6 years.
Yeah, that's definitely how it appears from the outside. It's pretty exciting watching a Kiwi company moving so much and making such great strides. And you've touched on the types of people that are affected by Sharesies, the smaller investors who don't want to spend $15 to $30 on one transaction fees. Maybe that eats up most of what they have to invest, and it's making it so accessible, which is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I'm ever asked what I'm most proud of over the last 6 years, it's definitely that conversation has changed completely. Like when we started, we would ask people, who can be an investor, and almost no one would put their hands up, and then who wants to be, and most people would. And I think that's really changed now. Like we've broken down the feeling of you can't. Like even if you don't invest now, most people know that they can somewhere, and that part at least gone. So we talk about Sharesies strategy in three ways, really. Access, so giving people access with whatever, and that's like a strategic problem that's solved now. Like if you ask me absolutely any investment in the world, I can tell you how we can offer it for a cent, basically. And then you've got the two big rocks, I suppose, the next two pillars of the strategy, which is confidence and motivation. You've got to make sure people then feel confident enough to go invest, hence our investment in education, and then motivated as well. So those are sort of what we consider to be the life's work of Sharesies. Like they'll never be solved completely because how confident or motivated someone feels is ebbs and flows all the time based on heaps of different factors that are well outside our control. And it's also really, really generational in how people view that as well. So it'll just be a forever problem that the business is trying to solve. So it's also the meaty side of what we're trying to do, and that's where the most impact comes from. And if we want people to be far more financially empowered, we've got to get those two right. So a huge amount of focus on that at the moment.
I love that. Sorry, this is so cool. And so what were some of the most important factors in the early stages?
I mean, from which side, the business or
The vision, I think,
like the
getting started, you've got
vision?
this really cool vision, and there's quite a few of you coming together with
Yeah.
different ideas and opinions. But you've got to take that and actually turn it into something, to turn it into action.
Yeah. I mean, so the first thing is people got to quit their jobs, in my opinion,
Yeah.
which is a big step, right? It's really, really risky, but um, um, sort of make your money with risk and keep it with diversification, or make your impact with risk and keep it with diversification. Like the good things to think about, you've actually risk can be really scary, but if it's measured, it can also be a really good thing as well. So I think making that leap was the first side. After that, learning to work together with six people who haven't necessarily worked together before. Um, we had different relationships across the group, but we still had to bring that together, and it was so organic. But Brooke in particular was really deliberate in us coming together as a team and working out how we were going to communicate. We set the values of the business really early. So the values of Sharesies are always care, in it together, and chase remarkable. And those three are like super strong today at the business. We talk about them all the time. And it really just started with the six of us learning how we work together. It was like, well, we basically got around a table and said, like, what are the things that we really want to see in this business that we're creating? Because you're not just creating a product. We knew that it was going to live far past, hopefully, our tenure here at Sharesies, and well into the future. So if we can get those fundamentals right first, what does that look like? And then we talked about things that we've seen in organizations that we never want to see at Sharesies. And then we sort of shaped those up to what that would look like in a value set. And for always care, it's pretty basic. It's just, it's caring for all stakeholders. It's caring for our customers and our investors. It's caring for ourselves as a team, our families around us, shareholders, the environment. Like, it's really broad there, and just a huge part of how Sharesies operate is that little extra bit of care all the time, and making sure that we consider that. Then in it together, that was the sort of, you did good and we screwed up type thing. So it's just like sharing all the wins and stuff, and sharing individually as well when things are going well, and but in a place where ego wasn't the driver. There were people in the team who had really experienced places with individualistic egos and stuff, and we were like, that's not a place we want to work. We want to win this together. And that's something we're so hot on at Shares at the moment. We're trying to keep hierarchy has its place clearly for supporting people, but sometimes hierarchy becomes the thing that does the exact opposite of supporting people, right? So we sort of consider ourselves to run ourselves like a very lean hierarchical structure. We aim for it in that respect, but culture-wise, no hierarchy. Like everyone should be able to talk to everyone. And as you get bigger, that's easier said than done, because regardless of how your leaders feel, people come in with their own expectations of how this is supposed to work. But something we really try and push for all the time. And then chase remarkable. The key part of that word is the chase part. It's like remarkable will never be achieved. Like we love that saying at Sharesies, which is perfect is the enemy of better. It's like if we can just keep chasing this and just get better and better all the time, then and ultimately the remarkable bit is like people literally remarking on what you're doing. Like, is it beautiful? Is the experience better than what I've received anywhere else? And we just do that across the business as well. So that's really that people stuff, like you just can't go past how hard that is to get right, I think, early on, particularly with 6 people. If you've just got one almost dictator style founder CEO type thing, it can be a little bit easier for that clarity, but also potentially not set the business up for so well for the people stuff as it grows into the future. So yeah, that was where a huge amount of our focus went early on. Aside from that, it was listening to customers, building product, and learning from customers every day. Never building something that with too much assumption behind it, I suppose. Like Sonia often talks about, when you build product, you should people will always give you feedback on what's missing from it, but they won't give you feedback on the bits that are there that they never use. So we've always sort of tried to launch quite lean product, and then people tell you pretty quickly what they're missing. So and that we've found that to be a really great way of building product over time.
There's a very strong thread of communication and the way you describe the journey and how you get where you're going. It sounds like, it's very, very collaborative and communicative, both with each other and with your stakeholders too.
Yeah, completely. I mean, you're right. I mean, communication's the hardest aspect of leadership, and not something you really appreciate. Right? Well, I was naive to, that's for sure, until you hear it, but you don't really understand what that means until you're. I was actually at a conference last week, and someone talked about how often you might need to communicate to someone, in, a partner or husband or wife or child or parent or whatever, that brother or sister, someone very close to you who loves you, how often sometimes you have to tell them something before it sinks in. And on average that might be 3 or 4 times or something, and then yet we wonder sometimes why what we say to people who don't necessarily love us or have that strength of relationship, and why they don't get it straight away, or that first time. And I've never thought about this before, but they were just like, look, if you feel like you have to say it 3 or 4 times to someone you really care about, or who cares about you, there's probably 15 or 16 times to the people that next stretch out. And yeah, you're right, like getting really robust on the communication of it, and then just repeating it over and over again, so that people can have the chance to embed it and really get it, is super important. So yeah, a huge amount of communication focus.
So you had your team. You guys have planned the vision. Some of you have checked in your jobs, communicating, setting values and direction of the company. So how did you get your first transaction?
So while we started by building the brand aspect of it, we had a website which was just collecting emails for waitlist, and we actually still do that for all of our products that we launch. Excuse me. And so that was how we approached that. So while our engineers and designers Ben, Martin, Rich were building the product, Brooke, Sonia, and I were out there like writing blogs, education blogs, and trying to get as much PR and trying to build this like demand for something that wasn't there yet, just by a problem statement. Really, it's like, do you want to invest? Well, sign up here. It was almost that basic, but it was with a brand that's friendly. Introducing the color pink to finance for the first time, and with fruit around it and stuff, and it just felt so much more approachable. So then we had this list of about 6,000 people when the product was ready to go. It was a very basic product, but I just remember the surprise of Martin, Richard, and Ben when they came out of their sort of room, they call it, where they were doing the development, and they're like, well, now we've got a product, what are we going to do now? And we were like, well, let's just email it to some of these people and see if they sign up. So that's what we did. And I remember them being shocked when people started putting money in, but it actually happened quite quickly. Now, very small amounts. Like, it took about 3 months for Sharesies to get the first $1 million on the platform. Now, $1 million sounds like a massive number, and it is on an individual basis, but in our industry, it's really tiny. But we were super proud of hitting that number. It's such a trust point. And you fast forward today, I think we trade on average probably $20 to $25 million a day, or maybe more than that. And it's just that change it's almost hard to believe when you think the 3 months that it took. It made the papers when we got $1 million, and then now you look at how that evolves and how that grows as people's trust in the platform and confidence with investing grows. So, yeah, it's just building a little bit of hype around something, creating, getting that group of early adopters or people to love your product on early, and giving them that special feeling of helping you build the product, because people are amazing at giving feedback and coming on that journey. So it's been super cool, and we're very grateful for those who joined us super early as well.
Yeah, I bet you are. And I hear that the trust is a big one. Financial industry is one that people have quite polarizing relationships with. And so breaking in, you're new, so there's already going to be an element of resistance or hesitation. So, it sounds like you guys put a lot of energy in early building trust. You've chosen a really thoughtful color palette to approach a certain type of investor. Trust in your industry is massive.
Yeah, it is. It's probably second or third type as far as how much you want to really trust something. Healthcare is normally your number one for very good reasons. But then trusting people with your money is very important. And we, Sharesies, as any business, you've got to take risks, and you've got to, as a startup, you have to take risks and stuff. But we've very clearly from the start, one thing we will never ever take risk on as Sharesies is people's money. So having those protections in place and ensuring that we're always super comfortable with what we're doing there before we launch anything has been a big part of that, and that'll be part of our DNA and culture forever. As long as you can deliver on that over and over again, and then go above and beyond with an experience, then you can start to build that trust. And again, largely that comes from, we were the most audited startup New Zealand's ever had, probably in the few years. I mean, that might be an exaggeration. I'm sure it's a bit harder if you're building a rocket ship or something, but it was really complicated. But really, the trust doesn't come from those audits. The trust comes from the experience that you show customers, and making sure that you're delivering on a promise to them. And then the regulation stuff is absolutely necessary tick box stuff, but some people think that in itself builds the trust. It's not. It's just that's the last thing that someone will ask. They'll experience the other levels of trust in your platform, how slick it is, how much it delivers on the expectations, how easy it or hard it is to get your money in and out, how responsive and how the team communicate with you are, how the founders or the executives or board present themselves, who they are and where they've worked previously. All of that stuff becomes super important. And then you've got the regulatory side, which is extremely key, clearly, for other reasons, but not necessarily for the reasons that the people will be onboarding with you.
So what were some of the things that the challenges or the lessons in the early stages?
So many. I think I've got very good at, and I think necessarily we spend a little bit of time reflecting sometimes, but more trying to remember the progress and how far we've come, if you're ever feeling down on it, more so than, hey, what mistakes did we make and how could we have done that better? Because starting a company, being an entrepreneur, you have to just accept that you'll make more mistakes than the average person, and that that's fine, and that's how you learn or improve the business. So we're absolutely terrible at answering this question because we just haven't dwelled on them too often, but there's been heaps.
Well, I suppose you wouldn't be doing it right if there weren't. Yeah. You wouldn't be trying hard enough. Right. So it sounds like my next question was going to be, how do you get the best out of those around you? And I think you've touched on that a lot already. It sounds like it might be one of your key values, is those around you, and giving those opportunities to everybody. And so is there anything that you wanted to add to that question before I...
No, just, you can spend a lot of time trying to mitigate risk of bad performance or people not doing the right thing. And it's not the approach we've taken, because by and large, people are trying to do their best at any given time. You have to get really unlucky actually to find a bad actor in that space, someone who has genuinely bad intention for it. Like it's rare. So the first place you have to look where something's not happening like you'd want it to be has to be yourself, and coming back to the communication point again and how that's been delivered. And then how often you're having upfront conversations or being really clear on where you're trying to head, and where that, most conflict comes from a difference in expectation, nothing else. Two people expected different things towards something, and that's where the conflict comes from. So we do things all the time around expectation exchanges and stuff, trying to make sure that's really clear on what I expect of you and what you expect of me, regardless of where that sits. So, we really do care for people and trust that people will deliver good outcomes and we try to be very empowering in doing that. And the way we do that is by making sure our expectations are super clear. And sometimes people confuse very strong or clear expectations with managing it. Sometimes you hear that, but it's just not. They're just two completely different things. So it is a big focus for us. And you touched on it earlier. Communication's key.
Mm. Before we go on the recording, you mentioned how much you've been traveling for the work that you're doing. So how are you looking after yourself in your downtime so that you can bring your A game?
Yeah, I don't actually travel that much. It's a weird week. So you put me on it. Yeah, it's like been I spend a bit of time in Sydney. I normally try to do one-nighters there. So I find that if I'm there for 3 days or one day, I pack in the same amount of meetings and stuff and get the same amount done. So try to really accelerate those processes. But how do I look after myself? I mean, I do enjoy like fitness. I go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and I play squash on the weekends. It's based, and then outside of that, Brooke and I have 2 young kids, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So it's very easy. Not, I think it'd be far easier to be a lot more consumed by work if you didn't get home every day with 2 people who could literally not give a crap about, they what we get up to at work. So spending a lot of time with them and making sure that that's a priority is very important to us. And also, I think means that it never starts to feel bigger than what it really is at Sharesies. I'm a massive believer that every single person, and sometimes it's hard to hear, but every single person in anything is replaceable. And like for me, some people find that very uninspiring thought. I find it like very relaxing. So like I'll just keep doing what I need to do. And every problem is just, regardless of how big it is or small it is, it's just, big problems are just lots of small problems normally, and we're really good at solving problems. Humans are really good at it, and I think we've created quite the art of it at Sharesies. So I think we just do a pretty good job of that balance. Last thing I'll say there is one thing about a co-CEO model is you're always sharing, and with 6 founders, then we have a really tight relationship now, and that just means that the weight's always pretty well spread. And they used to call us whack-a-mole actually in the early days of the business. Brooke, Sonia, and I, when we'd go into meetings, it was like, it's all about knocking you down, and they'll sort of knock one of you down, and they reckon the other one will pop up, and they might get lucky to get 2. And this constant kept on coming. One of us is always feeling good about something. It's not very often you'll find us all in the doldrums at the same time.
I think I think you've already painted a lot of picture of this next question, but what is the secret sauce for Sharesies?
Secret sauce. I mean, the first thing is doing it with a real customer problem, and working hard to solve that. The secret sauce is, I mean, maybe it's those values. Like it's been really clear on where you're trying to head as a team and trying to create a business with a purpose and a future, not just a product for a profit. And the purpose of Sharesies is to create financial empowerment for everyone, and it's like we can't do that. Firstly, you have to accept that Sharesies won't deliver that by itself. So you've got to have really strong partnerships and really celebrate any innovation into the industry. And then with our vision being so clear as well, the same money opportunities for someone with $5 and $5 million. It's just gives you a real clear framework to operate in, and yet also the vision and the purpose themselves give you no choice but to innovate. Like there was no way of just doing something else the way it was being done. So yeah, and then finally, people talk a lot about Sharesies as a fintech. We refer to ourselves as a fun tech, but ultimately and the reason for that is fintech just captures finance and technology, but like today, to stand out, you have to be creative and you have to have good design, and everyone needs to think about, clearly we have a lot of designers at Sharesies and they're all amazing, but everyone needs to think like a designer. And what does a designer do? They solve problems for people. So having those three disciplines really core to the business, I think has been really key as well.
Okay. And where to from here for Sharesies?
We're just going to keep on. Look, every door we open in financial services, that you find out another 10 that need to be knocked down. So it's like we worked in the industry, and I can't believe what we discover every day about these opportunities that people are missing out on that we think they should have access to. So the where to next, we've got real big, strong focus at the moment, New Zealand and Australia. Got a very strong focus on company partnerships. So we're trying to encourage more and more businesses to give staff shares as part of their remuneration, and we're getting really good uptake on that. I mean, New Zealand and Australia actually, Australia's better at it with regards to people's appetite for that risk aspect of it, which has given them really good financial outcomes over time. Comparatively, Australia has is actually has more equality as well, and like New Zealand's probably going the wrong way with regards to that. And it's like, well, how do we change that? And part of that is you have to have people who get a share in the upside and what's happening. So we're super passionate about that. And then, KiwiSaver, we think there's massive changes that we can do there. Apathy in KiwiSaver is very, very high. People don't feel overly motivated to do more, but it is going to be super key to people's future and having a happy retirement, and potentially much broader implications on that, on the financial health of the country, which will impact everyone with regards to infrastructure investment and how we can expect our kids and their kids and stuff to live into the future. So we're going to work hard on getting far more people engaged with that as well. Outside of that, we're always looking for different ways to have impact and different ways to support people and better experiences with their money. And we really feel like we're just at the start. We've very high ambition and think there's still a long road there. But we'll sort of take the turns of the market, and it's not necessarily laid out in a path. It's very wobbly.
And you can go so much further together. The fact that there's so many of you pulling that waka together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool. And you're so down to earth. It's exciting to watch a Kiwi company being so aspirational, innovating, looking after their people, and achieving so much that affects ordinary people in New Zealand. It's epic. So thank you. Thanks for taking the time to sit with me.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed the chat.